The morning air hummed with the distant rumble of jet engines. As Monica Williams stood poised at the curb of the sprawling airport, she adjusted the strap of her leather handbag, its rich brown surface catching the faint sunlight, while her driver wrestled her sleek black suitcase from the trunk of the car. A delicate scarf, woven with threads of emerald green and gold, danced lightly across her shoulders in the gentle breeze, framing her elegant silhouette against the chaos of departing travelers. For a fleeting moment, she paused, her dark eyes tracing the towering glass facade of the Terminales structure that gleamed with modernity yet felt cold and impersonal. There was something magnetic about her presence, understated yet impossible to ignore, a quiet authority woven into the way she carried herself. Monica was no novice when it came to airports. Years of crisscrossing the globe for work and pleasure had made her a seasoned traveler, but today carried a different weight. This wasn't just another trip, it was the dawn of a new chapter. She had clawed her way to a position of power, a role she'd earned through relentless determination, and with it came a mantle of responsibility she wore like armor. As her driver handed her the suitcase, she offered him a polite nod, her voice slipping out warm and smooth, tinged with the melodic cadence of her African accent. "Have a good day," she said, the words formal yet kind, a small gesture of grace amid the morning rush. With that, she turned and stepped through the sliding doors, leaving the muted hum of the outside world behind, and plunging into the frenetic pulse of the terminal. Inside, the airport thrummed with life. Travelers darted about, their faces buried in glowing phone screens, while families clustered together, corralling overstuffed suitcases and restless children. Overhead, garbled announcements crackled through the air, a constant reminder of the urgency that fueled this place. Monica moved through the crowd with effortless poise, her posture ramrod straight, her steps deliberate and unhurried. She radiated a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention, but claimed it nonetheless, her polished heels tapping softly against the gleaming floor. Her eyes flicked upward, scanning the signs for the priority check-in line, and she joined the queue, setting her suitcase beside her with care. Reaching into her handbag, she retrieved her passport and ticket, her movements precise, almost ritualistic. Ahead of her, the line moved swiftly, tended by gate agents stationed behind a sleek counter. Monica's sharp gaze caught them immediately. The first, a young blonde woman with angular features, Lisa, according to her name, tepidly tapped at her phone, her attention drifting far from the passenger she was meant to serve. The second, a man named Mike, slouched against the counter, his tie loosened and his demeanor dripping with boredom as he traded lazy banter with Lisa. As Monica's turn approached, she felt their eyes shift toward her, their chatter faltering for a split second. "Next," Lisa called out, her voice sharp and clipped, devoid of any warmth. Monica stepped forward, her ticket and passport in hand, and offered a small, measured smile. "Good morning," she said, her accent curling around the words like a soft melody. Lisa barely glanced at her, snatching the ticket with a flick of her wrist. "Morning," she muttered, her tone flat, as if the effort of speaking was a burden. She scanned the ticket, and a faint smirk tugged at the corner of her mouth. "First class, huh?" Lisa said, holding the ticket up as though it were a curiosity, her eyes darting to Mike. He arched an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. "Yes, that's correct," Monica replied, her voice steady, unshaken by the subtle jab. Lisa handed the ticket back without meeting Monica's gaze. "I'm going to need to see your ID," she said, the smirk lingering as she leaned into the word need, her tone suggesting it was anything but routine. Monica complied without a hint of irritation, sliding her passport across the counter with calm precision. Lisa flipped it open, her eyes lingering on the page longer than necessary, as if searching for something to question. "Huh," she murmured under her breath, just loud enough for Monica to catch. Mike leaned in, peering over Lisa's shoulder with mock seriousness. "Looks legit," he said, his voice carrying a theatrical edge, the words dripping with condescension. Their shared glance was a silent agreement, a quiet pact to undermine her. Monica heard it all, insinuation, the thinly veiled mockery, but she didn't flinch. Years of navigating these subtle slights had honed her resilience. She'd faced worse than this, the sit-along glances, the whispered doubts, the assumptions that clung to her like shadows. Instead of rising to their bait, she let the silence hang heavy between them, her composure a weapon more powerful than words. Lisa finally slid the passport back, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal the disdain beneath. "You're all set," she said, waving a hand toward security. "Enjoy your flight." Monica nodded, her thank you crisp and polite, before gathering her belongings and walking away. Behind her, the faint sound of their laughter trailed like an echo, sharp and hollow. The security line stretched long and chaotic, but Monica's priority status granted her a swift passage. Still, as she neared the checkpoint, a guard stepped forward, his broad frame blocking her path. "Random screening," he barked, his tone brusque but not unkind. Monica nodded, setting her handbag and suitcase on the inspection table without protest. She slipped the scarf from her shoulders, folding it with care, and unclasped her watch, placing both in a plastic tray. The guard rummaged through her belongings with detached efficiency, pausing when his fingers brushed against a leather-bound notebook tucked inside her bag. "Looks fancy," he remarked, flipping it open to reveal pages filled with neat handwriting and intricate sketches. "It's a personal journal," Monica said evenly, her voice betraying no impatience. He nodded absently, closed the book, and slid her items back. "You're good to go," he said, already turning to the next passenger. Monica reassembled herself with quiet dignity, draping the scarf back over her shoulders and fastening her watch with a deft twist of her wrist. She thanked the guard and moved toward the boarding gate, her stride steady and purposeful. Nearby, a young man named James watched her from a distance, his hands buried in the pockets of his hoodie. He'd seen it all: dismissive smirks from Lisa and Mike, the unnecessary scrutiny at security. His jaw tightened as he replayed the moments in his mind, the casual cruelty of it all striking a chord deep within him. James knew discrimination well. He'd felt it sting himself too many times to count. Something about Monica, the way she held herself, unflinching in the face of their pettiness, stirred a quiet admiration in him. He glanced at his phone, his thumb hovering over the record button, tempted to capture the injustice unfolding before him. For now, he held back, but the fire in his chest burned brighter. At the gate, Monica settled into a chair by the window, her notebook open on her lap. Her pen danced across the page, each stroke a release of the thoughts swirling in her mind. The terminal buzzed around her, announcements blaring, passengers shuffling, but she was an island of calm amid the storm. She'd endured moments like this countless times, the assumptions about her accent, the quiet ridicule of her presence. Yet each slight only sharpened her resolve, a reminder of why she'd fought so hard to rise above it all. As she gazed out at the plane waiting on the tarmac, a small, knowing smile curved her lips. They had no idea who she was, no inkling of the power she held or the reckoning she was about to unleash. And that, she thought, was exactly as it should be. The boarding announcement crackled through the loudspeaker, pulling Monica from her reverie. She closed her notebook with care, tucking it into her handbag, and rose to her feet, adjusting her scarf with a graceful sweep of her hand. "First-class passengers may now board," the gate agent's voice intoned, steady and clear. Monica stepped forward, her suitcase gliding silently behind her, her movements a study in elegance. As she approached the boarding desk, she saw them again: Lisa and Mike, still lounging against the counter with the same air of indifference. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they spotted her, recognition flickering across their faces. Lisa straightened up, her lips curling into a smile that was all teeth and no sincerity. "Oh, it's you again," she said, her voice dripping with false politeness, a trace of mockery lurking beneath. Monica handed over her boarding pass, her expression serene. "Good evening," she said, her tone unwavering. Lisa took the ticket, her fingers lingering as she scanned it. What happened next would ripple far beyond that moment, a lesson in justice and the consequences of wielding power carelessly. For Monica wasn't just a passenger, she was the new CEO, a force of change cloaked in quiet elegance. And those who laughed at her that day would soon learn the cost of their arrogance, their careers unraveling as swiftly as their smug grins faded. The airport buzzed with a restless energy as Monica approached the check-in counter, her ticket clutched firmly in her hand. She handed it over to Lisa, the agent behind the desk, who took it with a practiced motion and slid it under the scanner. A green light blinked on the screen, paired with a faint, almost apologetic beep that cut through the hum of the terminal. Lisa's face remained a mask of neutrality, but something shimmered briefly in her hazel eyes. Irritation, perhaps, or the weariness of a long shift. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed the ticket back across the counter, the gesture sharp yet casual. "Enjoy your flight," she said, her voice dripping with a syrupy cheer that felt more like mockery than sincerity. Inside, Lisa's patience was fraying. She'd seen too many passengers like Monica today, each one a reminder of the monotony she couldn't escape. Monica caught her gaze for a fleeting second, her own expression a locked vault, cool, unreadable, and steady. "Thank you," she replied, her tone smooth as glass, betraying nothing of the storm she might have felt brewing beneath. She took the ticket, her fingers brushing the edge with quiet precision, and turned toward the gate, her steps deliberate, her posture unyielding. She didn't look back, but the weight of the encounter lingered in her chest, a familiar ache she'd learned to carry with grace. Behind the counter, Lisa leaned toward Mike, her co-worker, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush she assumed wouldn't carry. "Unbelievable," she muttered, her lips curling slightly as she nodded toward Monica's retreating figure. "But she's flying on someone else's points." Mike, slouched against the desk, let out a low chuckle, his broad shoulders shaking as he shook his head. "Or maybe she scraped by her whole life just for this one big trip," he added, amusement dancing in his tone. The two shared a knowing smirk, their words a quiet rebellion against the endless stream of passengers they judged from their perch. Unseen by either of them, a young man named James sat a few feet away, tucked into a stiff airport chair near the gate. His sharp eyes tracked the scene with a stillness that belied the intensity simmering within him. His phone rested lightly in his hand, angled just so, capturing the exchange in a discreet recording. His brow furrowed as he watched Monica stride away, her head held high despite the faint echoes of Lisa and Mike's snide remarks, trailing her like shadows. James felt a knot tighten in his stomach, anger, maybe, or a pang of recognition. He'd seen this before, the subtle jabs, the veiled disdain meant to sting without leaving a mark. His fingers twitched, itching to intervene, but he held back, opting instead to let the moment play out. The jet bridge stretched ahead, a silent tunnel bathed in the low hum of the aircraft's engines vibrating through the walls. Monica stepped onto the plane, her shoes tapping softly against the floor, and was met by Jenna, a flight attendant stationed at the door. Jenna's name tag gleamed under the cabin lights, her smile a well-rehearsed curve that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. "Welcome aboard," she said, her voice clipped and mechanical, as if she'd said it 1,000 times that day alone. Her gaze darted over Monica, pausing a beat too long on the scarf draped elegantly around her neck, a deep burgundy that stood out against her coat before flicking to the ticket in her hand. "First class, right this way," she added, sweeping her arm toward the cabin with a practiced flourish. Without waiting for a response, she turned to the next passenger, dismissing Monica as swiftly as she'd acknowledged her. Inside, Jenna felt a flicker of resentment. Another first-class passenger, another reminder of the divide she'd never cross. Monica moved down the aisle, her eyes sweeping over the first-class cabine, a sanctuary of luxury carved out from the chaos of the terminal. The seats were wide and plush, bathed in soft, ambient light that cast gentle shadows across the polished wood accents. The air carried a faint scent of leather and champagne, a quiet demand for reverence that hushed the voices of the few passengers already settled in. She reached her assigned spota window seat in the second row and paused, taking it all in. The man beside her tapped furiously at his laptop, his brow creased in concentration, while across the aisle, a woman sipped a drink and flipped through a glossy magazine. Oblivious to the world, Monica slid her handbag beneath the seat with care, her movements deliberate, as if grounding herself in the space. She straightened, her gaze drifting over the cabin again, and caught a few fleeting glances from her fellow passengers, curious, perhaps, but silent. Moments later, Jenna reappeared, a tray of pre-departure drinks balanced expertly on one hand. She moved from seat to seat, offering champagne or sparkling water with a smile that felt more like a mask than an invitation. When she reached Monica, that smile wavered, replaced by a cool indifference that sharpened the edges of her words. "Drink before takeoff?" she asked, her tone flat, stripped of the warmth she'd offered the others. Monica met her eyes briefly, unflinching. "Just water, please," she said, her voice steady and calm, a quiet defiance in its simplicity. Jenna nodded curtly and handed over a glass, but as Monica reached for it, Jenna tilted the tray just enough for a few drops to spill onto the tray table. "Oops," she said, her lips twitching into a half-smile that didn't match her eyes. Turbulence already. Inside, Jenna savored the petty victory, a fleeting balm for her own frustrations. Monica didn't flinch. She took the glass, set it down with care, and reached for a napkin from the seat pocket in front of her. With slow, intentional strokes, she wiped the spill, her movements a silent rebuke to Jenna's carelessness. Jenna lingered for a heartbeat, as if waiting for a crack in Monica's composure, but when none came, she moved on, her heels clicking faintly against the carpeted floor. From his seat in coach, James had a clear line of sight through the gap in the dividing curtain. He leaned forward slightly, his frown deepening as he watched the exchange. Monica's poise stood in stark contrast to Jenna's thinly veiled contempt, and it stirred something in him, a mix of admiration and frustration. He'd seen this dance before, the quiet power plays meant to degrade without consequence, and it gnawed at him. His thumb hovered over his phone, temptation tugging at him to act, but he held back, channeling his restless energy into the Notes app instead. His fingers flew across the screen, capturing every detail with a fervor that matched the pulse in his chest. He didn't know Monica, but he knew she didn't deserve this. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Monica turned her gaze to the window. The sky outside darkened, streaked with the last threads of daylight, and her reflection stared back at her faint, resolute. Her mind drifted to the day's slights, Lisa's smirk, Mike's laugh, Jenna's spill. They weren't new to her, these small cuts designed to unsettle, to remind her she didn't belong. Each one stung, but she'd long ago learned to let them sharpen her instead of break her. She thought of her journey's years of effort, the sacrifices, the victories, and felt a quiet fire kindle within her. These moments didn't define her. They fueled her. The engines roared to life, the plane tilting upward as it climbed into the sky. And Monica closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. There was work ahead, and she was ready. They didn't know it yet, but this flight would mark a turning point for her, and for them, justice, she knew, had a way of finding its mark. The flight settled into a steady rhythm, the engine's low hum a constant heartbeat through the cabin. Monica sat with her hands resting lightly on the edges of her tray table, her posture relaxed yet composed, a shield against the morning's lingering echoes. Her untouched water glass sat beside her open notebook, where her pen hovered, poised to capture the thoughts swirling in her mind. Around her, the first-class passengers drifted into their own orbits. A businessman in a crisp suit adjusted, his cufflinks with meticulous care, his eyes scanning a financial magazine. A woman in her 30s scrolled her phone across the aisle, her manicured nails tapping a staccato rhythm against the screen. They seemed oblivious to the quiet tension that had threaded through the gate and now pulsed faintly in the cabin. Jenna returned, this time with a stack of menus for the in-flight meal. Her smile was a polished veneer, slightly strained, but convincing enough to pass muster. She moved down the aisle, repeating her line with mechanical precision. "Here's the menu for today's service. Let me know if you have any questions." When she reached Monica, a shadow of discomfort flickered across her face, so brief it might have gone unnoticed. She thrust the menu forward without meeting Monica's gaze. Her movements rushed. "Here you go," she said, already pivoting to the next passenger before Monica could reply. Monica took the menu with a soft thank you, her voice even, though the slight didn't escape her. She unfolded it slowly, her fingers tracing the edges as she skimmed the options: grilled salmon, herb-crusted chicken, a vegetarian risotti's choice, a testament to the airline's promise of extravagance. Her calm was deliberate, a refusal to let Jenna's dismissal ripple through her. Back in coach, James sat wedged in his narrow seat, his knees brushing the chair in front of him. He'd chosen a spot near the curtain for this very reason, a partial view into the world of first class, where Monica sat like a quiet enigma. He watched her now, her composed silhouette framed against the window, and felt a pull he couldn't quite name. The way she handled the slight lies as sarcasm, Jenna's spill with dignity instead of anger, fascinated him. Why didn't she push back? He wondered, his voice a faint murmur under his breath. He knew the answer, of course. Speaking up carried a cost, one she likely couldn't afford in a space where power tipped against her. Still, it left him restless, a bitter edge settling in his throat. His fingers tapped the edge of his phone, the notes app still open. A growing record of the day's quiet injustices. The meal service began soon after, and Jenna returned with a tray for Monica. Unlike the careful attention she gave the others, placing trays down with a soft touch set. Monica's down with a sharp clink, the utensils jostling against the plate. "Enjoy," she said, the word clipped and hollow, before moving on. Monica glanced at the tray, a perfectly arranged plate of salmon, a swirl of sauce, a sprig of parsley, an offering of luxury undercut by its delivery. She picked up her fork, pausing as her thoughts drifted. The meal became a quiet ritual, each bite slow and deliberate. Though her mind replayed the day's encounters in vivid loops, the smirks, the whispers, the calculated spills, she ate in silence, her resolve hardening with every moment. A lesson in justice and consequence taking root. Power, when abused, always left a trace, and she'd make sure it didn't go unanswered. The sting of every calculated jab, every subtle slight, painted a vivid portrait Monica Williams had encountered far too many times in her life. Each dismissive glance, each muttered remark, was a brushstroke on a canvas of disrespect she'd grown all too familiar with. Yet, this time, something felt different, electric, almost alive. This time, she wasn't just a passive observer, she held the reins of power, and the weight of that authority pulsed through her veins like a quiet, steady current. As the plane hummed through the sky, the flight attendants moved down the aisles, collecting trays with practiced efficiency. Jenna, one of the attendants, paused at Monica's seat once more. Her voice, sharp and thinly veiled with impatience, cut through the ambient noise of the cabin. "Finished?" she asked, her tone hovering somewhere between a question and a demand. Monica lifted her eyes from the tray, her gaze unwavering, a calm sea hiding depths Jenna couldn't fathom. "Yes, thank you," she replied, her voice smooth as polished stone. She handed over the tray, her fingers grazing the cool, unyielding metal edge, a fleeting sensation that grounded her in the moment. Jenna lingered for a heartbeat, as if anticipating a complaint, a crack in Monica's composure. When none came, her lips twitched into a tight, insincere smile before she turned away, her muttered unbelievable floating back like a half-hearted taunt. Monica heard it clearly, the word hanging in the air like a challenge, but she chose silence over confrontation. She shifted in her seat, the soft leather creaking faintly beneath her, and reached for her notebook once more. Her pen danced across the page with deliberate, flowing strokes, each word spilling out as though it had been bottled up, waiting for this precise moment to breathe free. Writing was her refuge, a way to process the world's injustices without letting them consume her. Down in the coach section, James sat hunched over his tray table, his jaw tight with barely contained frustration. He'd been watching Jenna's behavior for most of the flight, their dismissive attitude, the way she seemed to single out Monica with a kind of petty relish. It gnawed at him, a splinter under his skin he couldn't ignore. He'd seen Monica endure it all with a grace he couldn't quite comprehend, and it stirred something protective in him, a quiet fury at the unfairness of it. Unable to sit idle any longer, he pulled out his phone and began typing furiously, his fingers tapping out a meticulous record of every detail he'd observed. Jenna's name, her clip tone, the way she'd practically rolled her eyes as she walked away, he captured it all with the precision of a courtroom stenographer. He didn't know what he'd do with this account yet. The plan hadn't fully formed in his mind, but the act of documenting felt like a small rebellion, a way to ensure Monica's quiet strength wouldn't fade into the background unnoticed. If no one else would stand up for her, he'd make damn sure her story was etched somewhere permanent. The plane began its descent, the captain's voice crackling through the speakers, pulling passengers from their private worlds to announce their arrival. Around Monica, people stirred, stretching stiff limbs and gathering scattered belongings, their movements a chaotic symphony of zippers and rustling bags. She, however, remained still, closing her notebook with care and slipping it into her handbag. Her face was a mask of serenity, betraying none of the storm she'd weathered during the flight. As the aircraft touched down, the cabin shuddered with the familiar jolts of deceleration, the hum of the engines softening into a low growl. Monica stayed seated, watching as the other passengers surged toward the exits, their impatience palpable. She'd learned long ago that rushing rarely yielded anything of value. Patience, she knew, was a weapon sharper than most realized. When the first-class cabin had nearly emptied, Monica rose with a quiet elegance, her movements unhurried yet purposeful. She adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, smoothed the creases from her tailored jacket, and retrieved her suitcase from the overhead bin. Stepping into the aisle, she felt Jenna's eyes boring into her back, a prickling sensation she refused to acknowledge. "Have a nice day," Jenna called out, her voice flat and hollow, the words stripped of any genuine warmth. Monica paused for a fraction of a second, her back still turned, before responding softly, "You too." Her tone carried a subtle weight, a quiet dignity that lingered in the air like an echo, leaving Jenna with nothing to grasp onto. As Monica stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, her expression remained an enigma, a fortress of calm amidst the chaos. Behind her, the flight crew carried on with their routines, oblivious to the ripples she'd set in motion. But Monica knew deep in her bones that the tide was shifting. Justice wasn't a loud, vengeful thing for her. It was a slow, unshakable force, and its reckoning was coming. The terminal buzzed with life travelers weaving through the crowd, their voices a low murmur that faded into white noise as Monica focused on the path ahead. The flight's indignities clung to her like a faint shadow, Jenna's smirks, the way her tone had dripped with disdain, the stifled laughter Monica wasn't meant to hear but did. Yet her face revealed none of it. She'd spent years perfecting this mask, a shield forged through countless encounters where her worth was questioned. Her presence diminished. As she neared the exit, her eyes caught on a tall man in a crisp suit, holding a sign that read Monica Williams, CEO Welcome. His posture was rigid, professional, his sharp gaze scanning the throng of rivals. When their eyes locked, his face softened into a broad, genuine smile, and he stepped forward, extending a hand. "Mrs. Williams," he said, his voice warm with a hint of deference. "Welcome to headquarters." "Thank you, Mr. Bennett," Monica replied, shaking his hand with a poise that felt second nature. "I appreciate you meeting me here." The exchange was courteous, layered with unspoken weight. She caught the flicker of curiosity in Bennett's eyes, a question he didn't dare voice. How had her trip been? She wasn't ready to share that yet, and her silence told him as much. He guided her through the terminal, their steps measured amidst the flurry of travelers rushing to gates and baggage claims. Monica moved with an understated authority, her suitcase gliding effortlessly behind her, its wheels whispering against the polished floor. Bennett gestured toward a private elevator, its sleek doors a promise of exclusivity. "Everything's been prepared for your arrival," he said, his tone crisp yet welcoming. "The team's eager to meet you." Monica nodded, her response brief but deliberate. "Good. I'm eager to meet them too." Inside the elevator, the mirrored walls reflected their composed figures, Bennett in his tailored suit, Monica in her immaculate jacket and scarf. She caught him glancing at her reflection, his curiosity breaking through the professional veneer. "I trust the flight was comfortable," he ventured, his voice cautious, testing the waters. "Comfortable enough," she replied, meeting his gaze in the mirror. Her words were clipped, a polite deflection that left no room for prying. Bennett nodded, sensing the boundary, and fell silent as the elevator hummed upward. When the doors slid open, they stepped into the executive lounge, a sanctuary of quiet luxury compared to the frenetic terminal below. Plush armchairs lined the space, bathed in soft lighting, while a panoramic window framed the runway's endless dance of planes. A small cluster of airline executives stood near a long table, their hushed conversations dying out as Monica entered. A woman in a tailored gray suit stepped forward, her smile professional but warm. "Mrs. Williams, welcome. We're honored to have you here." "Thank you," Monica said, shaking her hand with a firm grip. "I appreciate the warm welcome." She took her place at the head of the table, her movements deliberate, exuding a quiet command that drew every eye in the room. The executives settled into their seats, their attention fixed on her, waiting for her to set the tone. Monica placed her handbag beside her chair, her hands resting lightly on the table as she surveyed the group. "I won't take up too much of your time," she began, her voice steady and resonant. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for this Airline. I'm committed to leading with integrity, accountability, and respect." The room hung on her words, the silence thick with anticipation. She let it linger, giving her statement room to breathe before pressing on. "My goal is to ensure every employee, from the top executives to the newest hires, embodies the values this airline stands for. That starts with holding ourselves and each other to the highest standards." Her gaze swept the room, unflinching. "I'm aware there have been issues in the past, incidents swept under the rug. That ends now." The executives shifted subtly, exchanging fleeting glances, their discomfort palpable beneath her calm authority. She'd struck a nerve, and she knew it. After the meeting, Monica lingered in the lounge, her mind already racing toward the next steps. Bennett approached, tablet in hand, his demeanor cautious yet attentive. "There's a press introduction this afternoon," he said, "and a private meeting with the board tomorrow morning." Monica scanned the schedule briefly, then looked up at him. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett. But there's one more thing I'd like to address today." He tilted his head, waiting. "I need to arrange a meeting with the flight crew from this morning's flight," she said, her tone firm yet measured. "Particularly the cabin staff and ground agents." Bennett hesitated, a faint crease forming on his brow. "Of course. May I ask if there's a specific concern?" Monica met his gaze directly, her expression a wall he couldn't breach. "Let's call it a review," she said evenly. "It's best we start with clarity." As Bennett stepped away to make arrangements, Monica settled by the window, her eyes tracing the planes taxiing below. The rhythmic motion soothed her, a stark contrast to the fire simmering beneath her calm exterior. She thought of Jenna's impatience, James's quiet outrage, and the countless others who'd witnessed at her ignored the small injustices of the day. Power, she knew, could corrupt as easily as it could uplift. But in her hands, it would be a tool for something greater, justice that didn't shout, but reshaped the world in its quiet, unshakable wake. This was only the beginning. In the quiet chambers of her mind, Monica Williams replayed every jagged shard of her day, letting the memories swirl like a storm gathering strength. She could still see Lisa's sharp, mocking smirk at the check-in counter, a look that had sliced through the air with casual cruelty. She recalled Jenna's clipped, dismissive tone echoing over the hum of the airplane engines, each word dripping with indifference. And then there was James's reserved young man whose steady, watchful eyes had caught her attention amid the chaos. His quiet defiance, a flicker of resistance against the injustice unfolding before him, had struck her deeply. It wasn't loud or showy, but it lingered in her thoughts like a beacon, a small yet powerful signal that not everyone had turned a blind eye to the indignity she'd endured. Monica's outward calm was a carefully crafted shield, masking the inferno blazing within her. This wasn't about fleeting anger. Anger was a spark that flared and faded, too weak to fuel real change. No, what burned inside her was something fiercer, determination. It coiled around her heart, steady and unyielding, a resolve to ensure that no one else would suffer the same humiliation she had. As she sat poised in the private meeting room, waiting for the reckoning to begin, a faint smile curved her lips, not smug, but knowing. This moment was merely the opening move in a far grander game, one where justice would be deliberate, exact, and wholly deserved. The room itself stood in sharp contrast to the lavish executive lounge she'd left behind. Gone were the plush armchairs and glittering chandeliers. Instead, stark white walls framed a sleek oval table surrounded by plain, functional chairs. It was a space built for purpose, not comfort, and that suited Monica perfectly. She sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid yet graceful, a closed notebook resting before her like a silent testament to the meticulous observations she'd recorded throughout the day. To her left, Mr. Bennett fidgeted subtly, his tablet cradled in his lap. His eyes darted toward her now and then, uncertainty flickering in his expression as he tried to gauge what lay ahead. The air was thick with anticipation, broken only by the muffled thud of footsteps approaching from beyond the closed door. A soft knock pierced the stillness. Mr. Bennet rose, his movements deliberate and measured, as though he sensed the weight of what was coming. He opened the door and then shuffled Lisa, Mike, and Jenna's airline staff from that morning's flight. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced by a palpable unease that clung to them like damp fog. Lisa's hands twitched nervously at her sides, her eyes flitting between her colleagues and Monica. Mike's broad shoulders slumped slightly, his usual bravado nowhere to be found. Jenna, once the boldest of the trio, kept her gaze averted, her lips pressed into a tight, uneasy line. The swagger and smirks they'd worn so effortlessly earlier were gone, stripped away by the uncertainty now shadowing their every step. "Please, take a seat," Monica said, her voice smooth and steady, gesturing to the chairs across from her. There was no trace of venom in her tone, yet it carried an unshakable authority that filled the room. The three complied, their movements stiff and hesitant. Lisa fumbled with the hem of her uniform jacket, her fingers betraying her nerves. Mike's hands clamped onto the armrests, his knuckles paling from the force of his grip. Jenna sat rigid, her eyes fixed on the table as if it might shield her from what was to come. Monica let the silence stretch, a heavy, deliberate pause that pressed against the walls and demanded their full attention. When she spoke, her words were precise, each one a carefully placed stone in the foundation of her case. "I've asked you here to address an incident that took place earlier today," she began, her gaze locking onto each of them in turn. "An incident marked by a lack of professionalism and a blatant disregard for the values this airline claims to uphold." Lisa shifted in her seat, her discomfort blooming into a flush that crept up her neck. She shot a quick, desperate glance at Mike, seeking some silent alliance, but he stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. Jenna's shoulders stiffened, her breath catching as Monica's words settled over them like a judge's gavel. "I assume you're aware of what I'm referring to," Monica added. It wasn't a question, it was a declaration, and its weight pinned them in place. With a subtle nod to Mr. Bennet, Monica signaled the next move. He tapped his tablet, and the screen on the wall flickered to life. The footage James had captured at the check-in counter filled the room, every smirk, every whispered jab, every dismissive gesture replayed in vivid, unforgiving detail. The sound of Lisa's snide chuckle echoed faintly, a cruel little melody that now seemed to mock her instead. Mike's low, conspiratorial laugh followed, hollow and brittle in the sterile air. Jenna's curt dismissal of Monica's requests played out last, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. As the video rolled, the silence in the room grew denser, suffocating. Lisa's face burned crimson, her hands clutching the table's edge as if to steady herself. Mike's eyes fixed on a spot just past Monica, his breathing shallow and uneven. Jenna risked a glance at the screen, her expression freezing into a mask of shock and dawning regret. When the footage ended, Monica leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped neatly on the table. "This," she said, her voice as calm as a still lake, "is what I experienced. This is what passengers witnessed. And this is what now defines this airline in their eyes." Lisa opened her mouth, a shaky protest forming, but Monica raised a hand, silencing her before the words could spill out. "Let me be very clear," she continued, her tone unwavering. "This isn't just about one moment. It's about the culture it reveals, a culture that emboldens people like you. To think this behavior is tolerable." Her gaze settled on Lisa first, piercing and unrelenting. "You ridiculed a paying passenger," she said, her words steady but heavy with reproach. "You questioned the validity of my ticket and treated me with contempt. Tell me, Lisa, is that the service we strive to deliver?" Lisa's mouth worked soundlessly, her composure crumbling. "To didn't mean any harm," she stammered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "It was just a misunderstanding." Monica tilted her head slightly, her expression neutral. "A misunderstanding," she echoed. "You seemed perfectly intentional in the video." Lisa's shoulders slumped, her eyes dropping to her lap as shame swallowed her whole. Next, Monica turned to Mike, her focus unrelenting. "And you," she said, "your job is to assist. Yet you chose to join in the mockery. You found amusement in disrespect. Is that the conduct of someone who values their role?" Mike swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing as he struggled for words. "It wasn't meant to," he began, but Monica cut him off, her voice still calm yet edged with steel. "It wasn't meant to what? Be noticed, make a difference." His excuse withered under her scrutiny, and he fell silent, his grip on the chair tightening until his knuckles gleamed white. Finally, she fixed her gaze on Jenna. "And you," she said, her tone steady but pointed. "You had every chance to show professionalism and respect, yet you chose dismissiveness at every turn. You slammed a tray of water down so carelessly it splashed across me. You offered snide remarks instead of service. Is that the standard we should accept from our cabin crew?" Jenna's jaw clenched, her defiance flickering but finding no foothold. She said nothing, her silence a confession in itself. Monica straightened, her eyes sweeping over the trio. "This airline stands at a turning point," she declared. "We cannot afford to excuse behavior that erodes our mission and values. Effective immediately. The three of you are on unpaid leave pending a thorough review of your actions." Lisa gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as if to trap the sound. Mike shifted uncomfortably, his unease palpable. Jenna's eyes narrowed, a spark of rebellion flaring. "This is unfair," she snapped, her voice rising. "You're making this bigger than it is." Monica arched an eyebrow, her calm unshaken. "Unfair would be letting this slide," she replied. "Unfair would be subjecting another passenger to what I endured. Do you disagree?" Jenna's defiance faltered, and she sank back into her chair, defeated. Monica pressed on, her resolve unshakable. "You'll have time to reflect, to learn, to grow. Whether you seize that chance is your choice." With that, she stood, signaling the end of the confrontation. Lisa, Mike, and Jenna filed out, their footsteps heavy with a mix of shame, frustration, and lingering defiance. Mr. Bennett remained, his expression pensive. "That was thorough," he said, choosing his words with care. "It had to be," Monica replied, her voice firm. "Change doesn't come without accountability." She crossed to the window, gazing out at the planes lined up on the runway, their engines humming with purpose. This was just the beginning, a single step toward a broader transformation. Mr. Bennett lingered behind her, sensing the depth of her conviction. For Monica, this wasn't merely about one flight or one team. It was a clarion call, a lesson in justice and the consequences of wielding power carelessly. Respect wasn't negotiable. It was the bedrock of everything she intended to build. As the late afternoon sun spilled through the towering windows of the executive lounge, casting golden rays across the carpet, Monica stood resolute. Below her, the tarmac buzzed with life, each plane a vessel of stories yet untold. And she knew, with unwavering certainty, that under her watch, those stories would be met with dignity. There would be a reckoning. Monica stood alone in the vast lounge, her gaze drifting upward to the expansive windows where planes carved graceful arcs across the endless sky. She had always been captivated by the magic of aviation, not just the marvel of engineering, but the profound way it wove threads of human connection across continents, defying borders and distance. It was a tapestry of lives intersecting, a vision that had fueled her passion since she was a child dreaming of flight. Yet today, that beauty felt distant, overshadowed by the weight of the meeting she'd just left behind. The voices of Lisa, Mike, and Jenna lingered in her mind like a persistent echo, their tones laced with unease, their words stumbling over layers of denial and fragile defensiveness. She could still see the flickers of shame in their averted gazes, the way their shoulders tensed as if bracing for judgment. She'd witnessed those signs before countless times, in different rooms, on different faces, and she knew the path to transformation was a winding, arduous one. The faint click of the lounge door broke her reverie, pulling her back to the present. She turned slightly, catching sight of Mr. Bennett hesitating at the threshold. His steps faltered, as though he could sense the storm of thoughts swirling in her head. When their eyes met, he offered a small, knowing smile, a gesture that carried both warmth and quiet respect. "Mrs. Williams," he said, his voice soft but deliberate, "I just wanted to say how impressed I was with how you handled that meeting. It couldn't have been simple." Monica's lips curved into a tired but genuine smile, the exhaustion of the day tugging at her. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Simple or not, it had to be done." He nodded, stepping closer, his expression shifting to one of curiosity. "If I may, do you think they'll see this as a chance to grow, to really look at themselves?" Monica paused, her hands clasping together as she weighed his question. Her eyes drifted momentarily to the window, then back to him. "Some might," she replied, her voice measured but tinged with cautious hope. "But true change doesn't come from one tough conversation or a single wake-up call. It's about persistence, about building a place where respect isn't just a rare gift, but the very air we breathe." Bennett tilted his head, his thoughtful gaze lingering on her. "That's a future I'd fight for," he said quietly. Monica's smile widened, a spark of optimism igniting in her chest. "Then let's make it real," she said, her words firm with resolve. Later that evening, Monica retreated to her officious sanctuary perched on the top floor of the airline's headquarters. The room was a spacious haven, its corner windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline, where lights twinkled like stars against the encroaching dusk. She settled at her desk, the warm glow of her lamp casting soft shadows across the scattered papers before her. Her pen hovered over a blank page, trembling slightly as she began to pour her thoughts into words. This wasn't just a routine memo, it was a manifesto, a promise etched in ink to every soul under her leadership. "To all staff," she wrote, her handwriting steady despite the emotions churning within her. "Today is the dawn of a new era for this airline built on respect, accountability, and an unwavering pursuit of excellence. We're not just a business, we're a family, a community bound by shared purpose. Every step we take, every word we choose, mirrors who we are and what we stand for. Respect isn't a luxury, it's our bedrock. It's how we lift each other up, how we welcome our passengers, and how we earn the trust of the world beyond these walls. As your CEO, I vow to uphold this standard for myself and for all of us. Change is a steep climb, but it's a climb we can conquer together. Let's forge an airline that fills us all with pride." She read it over twice, her eyes tracing each line to ensure it carried the full force of her conviction. Satisfied, she signed her name, Monica Williams, Chief Executive Officer, with a flourish that felt like a seal on her commitment, then handed it to her assistant to share with the entire company. The next morning, Monica set out to connect with a group often forgotten amid the airline's bustle, the ground staff. She strode through the terminal, the hum of activity swirling around her, announcements crackling overhead, suitcases rumbling across the polished floor, passengers weaving through the chaos. Her presence turned heads, but her demeanor was open, inviting. Miss Green, the ground staff supervisor, approached her with a nervous grin, her hands fidgeting slightly. "Mrs. Williams, it's a privilege to have you here," she said, her voice a mix of awe and pride. Monica clasped her hand warmly, her grip firm yet reassuring. "The privilege is mine, Miss Green. I wanted to meet your team and thank you all in person. You're the heartbeat of this airline. Nothing moves without you, and I see every ounce of effort you pour in." As she spoke, Monica watched their faces light up with surprise and quiet gratitude. It wasn't every day the CEO walked their gritty corner of the terminal, let alone pause to shake their hands and hear their voices. She lingered with each worker, absorbing their story, soft early mornings, grueling shifts, and small victories, and their tentative suggestions for making things better. When it was time to go, Miss Green's eyes shone with emotion. "You being here, it means everything. It makes us feel like we matter." Monica rested a hand on her shoulder, her voice steady. "You do matter, and I'll keep showing you that every chance I get." As she made her way back through the terminal, Monica spotted a familiar figure near a coffee kiosk. James, the young man from her recent flight. He stood there, phone in hand, his brow furrowed with a quiet intensity that hinted at some inner resolve. Her heels tapped softly against the tiles as she approached, and when he looked up, recognition flashed across his face, followed by a jolt of surprise. "Mrs. Williams," he stammered, straightening. "Didn't think I'd see you here." She smiled, her warmth putting him at ease. "And yet, here we are. I wanted to thank you, James. What you did back there, right, didn't slip by me." He blinked, a shy grin breaking through his shock. "I just felt like someone had to step up, say something, do something." Monica nodded, her gaze steady. "You were right. It takes guts to stand tall when everyone else stays seated. And that's the kind of spirit we need more of. James ducked his head, a flush creeping up his cheeks. I didn't think it was a big deal. It was, Monica countered, her tone leaving no room for doubt. And if you ever want a future here, my office door's open. People like you are the ones who'll lift this airline higher. His smile grew, tentative but bright. Thank you, Mrs. Williams. I'll think about it. Monica continued on, her steps lighter, her determination a blazing fire within her. Change wouldn't sweep through overnight. It was a slow, deliberate dance of small victories and steady resolve. Back in her office, she stood by the window once more, watching a plane climb into the boundless sky. The journey ahead loomed large, fraught with challenges, but it was a path she'd chosen with every fiber of her being. Her thoughts circled back to the memo's words. Change is never easy, but it is always possible. To Monica, that wasn't just a rallying cry for her team, it was a vow she'd made to herself, a compass for the leader she aimed to be. What began as a fleeting moment of tension in that meeting room had blossomed into a profound lesson. Respect must be cultivated, but dignity is an unyielding force no one can strip away. Through her actions, Monica hadn't just held her ground, she had planted a flag for a new era, one where justice and accountability would ripple outward, reshaping the airline for years to come. The quiet power of that truth steadied her, a reminder that even the smallest stand against the abuse of power could echo far beyond the moment, building a legacy of integrity worth fighting for.